question, and I think there are multiple things founders should do when they are assessing a potential board member. I think, and I'll talk more about the early stage versus the growth stage. That's where I spend more of my time. I'd say, one thing every founder should do is talk to founders that have worked with that investor before. Oftentimes, especially in this environment where deals are moving so quickly and decisions are being made, pretty fast. I'd highly recommend that founders make sure they speak with folks who have worked with that investor, and ideally in situations where it hasn't always been up and to the right. And so you can also understand, how did the investor react when things weren't going as well as planned? And I think that will be very telling, especially for early stage founders, in terms of this investor being part of their journey over a long period of time. So I think that's very, very important. I think also really understanding, oftentimes I've seen founders think about a firm versus a partner, and I think both are important. I do think actually firms as institutions can offer a lot of value to founders, both because many larger firms, including ours, have teams that help our portfolio companies as they think about scale. And I think that's intangible value that will be super helpful for many folks, especially at the early stage. But also really thinking about that partner in particular. What is their background experience in this space? And how do I, as a founder, feel when I work with that or talk through that founder with that investor about my idea? Is it something that I can see myself sitting in rooms, sitting in board meetings, sitting in whiteboarding sessions with that individual and say, hey, I'm getting value out of this conversation or this engagement, and there's insight here that will be helpful for me. And I've done things like fake board meetings, I've done whiteboarding sessions, I've done dinners and things like that to get to know people at a personal level. All of that I think is important, and it goes both ways, obviously, but specifically for the founder, I think to get that level of comfort is extremely important, especially in a time of Zoom where you don't always get to meet your investors in person or as easily in person. So I think that's certainly extremely important. And then I would really think about the firm's strategy, and that's why I mentioned a little bit earlier with regards to how we think about concentrated investments and what does that mean from the potential investors' board commitments. Is this their 17th board they're going to be joining with you, or is this their 7th board? And that makes a big difference in terms of their ability to be engaged and be helpful to you. What is it? How many investments a year does this investor make? Is this one of 20 investments this year, or is this one of 3 investments or 2 investments this year? And I think that makes a very big difference in terms of their sort of implicit level of commitment to you and your business over the long run. And then, lastly, I'd say is capital matters. And so is this fund able to scale with you as you scale your business? This environment where obviously there's a lot of money out there, there's many different options, but I think it's, as many founders that I work with and our firm works with, as you get to build that relationship, it's actually pretty nice to be able to go back to the same investor and firm and say, hey, would you be interested in leading our next round? Would you be partners with us over this longer next step of this journey versus just this sort of singular moment of 12 to 18 months of this specific milestone and round? And I think for many founders that really resonates. So these are some of the things that I oftentimes, counsel my own founders that I work with, but also prospective founders to think through as they make these very important decisions. And again, in this environment where things move fast, I think it's of utmost importance for founders to really just take that moment, even if it's a full day or 2 or 3, to really go through that. And these days I've seen some firms put some pressure on timing or deadlines, and I just remind founders that the ball is truly in their court and they can push back on investors on timing and things so that they really feel comfortable around making this very important decision for them and their business.